Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is another episode of the evolution of the Epstein Chronicles. Today, we're going back to Santa Fe, New Mexico, folks, as the countdown begins for my trip to Santa Fe to discover some answers, hopefully, and to get some on-the-ground information. Like I thought, there's a lot more to Santa Fe than they've talked about in the media. I found an article from August of 2019 from the Daily Beast, and the headline is pretty sinister, folks. Epstein seen with young girls as he shopped for Baby Ranch in New Mexico. And we know that he liked to travel with young girls. We have other people who have corroborated that. We know that he took Virginia Roberts with him overseas and on his plane. And we know that a bunch of his fancy old friends flew on the planes with these underage girls. Now, I always knew that something more sinister was going on in Santa Fe. I always had a gut feeling, but we really haven't had any, evidence, rock solid evidence to come out like we've had in New York or Florida, where he was running those operations with the girls from the high schools. So we haven't really had too much going on with Santa Fe, and that's what spurred me to plan this trip and to head out in the middle of the month in January. So I'm going to be there for 4 days. I'm going to be conducting a few interviews with some sources I've talked to. I'm going to put together a little documentary about the trip. There's a lot of things to come early in 2020 and beyond. There's just a lot going on. I have a lot of things in the works. I've talked a little bit about some of them. I have another podcast I'm going to launch about the new Game of Thrones show that's going to be coming out. And I also am tossing around the idea of another true crime type of show. And I haven't really decided on the format yet, but I'm very interested in doing some sort of missing persons type of podcast or, something in that vein. So all of that will be coming sometime in 2020 down the road for sure. The Game of Thrones podcast, I'll be starting a lot sooner than that. What we're going to do in that podcast is we're going to go through the whole Fire and Blood book, basically. And we'll talk about some of the less known players in the Game of Thrones, a lot of Targaryen information, obviously. But anyway, I digress. Nobody listening here is really interested in that right now. So let's pivot away from all of that nonsense, and we're going to jump into this article. If you would like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. All right, and like I said, this article is from the Daily Beast. The author is Michael Daly, and it was published on August 6, 2019. The headline, Epstein seen with young girls as he shopped for Baby Ranch in New Mexico. R. Kelly arrived under escort of U.S. Marshals on Friday at the same small New Jersey airport where Jeffrey Epstein was arrested last month. The singer and the money manager are charged, the money manager, the pedophile, and the singer, the two pedophiles, are charged in separate cases with having sex with multiple minors. Both have long been seen in the company of underage girls, and both cases raise the question of why so many people said nothing over the years. Very good question to start your article with there, sir. I've been asking that same question from the very beginning, okay? Why did nobody say, what in the hell is this guy doing with a whole entire, basically, harem of young girls following him around wherever he goes? It's not normal behavior, folks. Saying something when you see something, the post-9/11 adage about terrorism, should also apply to the sexual abuse of underage girls. Yeah, I think so, right? I think so. If there's a guy like Jeffrey Epstein traveling around with all of these young girls and you have any sort of question, don't you think that you would approach him if you're in his atmosphere or you're in his orbit? You would approach him and be like, hey, what's up with all these young girls, man? Why do you have all of these young ladies around you? What's your deal? I know that I would be asking questions. Nothing's free in life, folks, all right? Nothing is free. And a lot of these rich people seem to forget that. These ultra-rich elites, they show up on that island and they think everything's free. It's just a buffet of human flesh. But there is always a price on the back end. Of course, not everybody could be expected to have understood the significance of what they were seeing before Epstein's proclivities became widely known. That included realtor Pat French of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Back in September of 1992, French was on the way to take her tween-turning teen daughter and a friend to see the first woman to lead the Cherokee tribe when she stopped at a luxury hotel to drop off some papers to a mega-rich New Yorker who was shopping for a ranch. When she rang the doorbell to the suite at the Rancho Encantado that September day in 1992, Jeffrey Epstein was not who answered. There were all these girls, French told the Daily Beast this week, a little bit older than my daughter. Not much. French made what seemed at the time to be a completely reasonable assumption. I thought, oh, these must be his daughters and friends he took along on the trip, French recalled. And, we're back in 1992. It's not like this lady, the realtor, Miss French here, is someone that was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. They were involved in a business transaction. She had no idea who Jeffrey Epstein even was, probably. But now, as she looks back on everything, she's realizing, wow, this was an odd situation. And this isn't the sort of person I'm talking about. You can't expect people to just meet Epstein or, just coming to his circle because of a business deal to know everything the man's up to. The people I hold responsible are the people that were in his inner circle, okay? The people that were enabling him financially or otherwise. She did not know at the time that Epstein had no children. The girls took the papers, which described properties that French thought might interest Epstein. He had told her he was seeking isolation. Yeah, that's a shock. Why do you think Epstein wanted isolation, folks? And why do you think he went to Santa Fe? He wanted really far away from people, French recalled. French proceeded on with her daughter and friends to see Cherokee Principal Chief Wilma Mankiller receiving an award from the International Women's Forum. Mankiller, now deceased from cancer in 2010, was a leading champion of women's rights as well as Native American rights and human rights in general. Mankiller was taking particular steps to combat the sexual abuse of children in her tribe. French never imagined that the girls she saw back at the plush Rancho Encantado were victims of evil such as Mankiller battled. I had no idea about this man, French later told the Daily Beast. And again, like I said, there's no, you can't hold somebody responsible who just meets the guy in the middle of a business transaction. You can't hold that person responsible for, being around Jeffrey Epstein or calling them an enabler. That's not the case. We only talk about people that are directly implicated in this case and people that were around Epstein enough to know what he was up to. Those are the only people that are ever really targeted on this podcast. And then there's other people on the outside orbit, right? Those people that probably knew what he was doing. They haven't been mentioned in court documents, though. And it's all speculation and conjecture. Listen, folks, it's not what I know. It's what I can prove, right? It is what we can prove. If we just talk about, oh, well, I know this and I got it on this website, then we're no better than the media with their nonsense, the legacy media. We're just no better than them. And that's just not how we're going to do things on this podcast. French had no further dealings with Epstein. He chose to buy a ranch through another realtor, Rhonda King, who was also then a representative to the New Mexico State Legislature. Shocking, huh? Jeffrey Epstein letting his tentacles intertwine into local politics. Boy, he loves to do that. Is it because he's a generous man, folks, and he just wants to help these politicians win re-election? Or is it because he expects a little, let me use something from the legacy media that they love right now, a little quid pro quo, perhaps? The purchase of the 10,000-acre Zorro Ranch came with an additional instant political connection, as Epstein bought it from the realtor's uncle, former Governor Bruce King. Oh, I'm sure that Bruce King didn't know Jeffrey Epstein at all, right? They would never hang out. The Kings would never accept money from Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, wait. They did. Epstein proceeded to build a 26,700 square foot hacienda-style hilltop mansion, the largest private home in Santa Fe County, perhaps the state. He really gets off on that, doesn't he? The largest townhome in New York, the largest private home in Santa Fe. He's one of those guys, right? Oh, look how big my truck is kind of guys. You know where I'm going with this. The former governor's brother, New Mexico State Treasurer David King, was quoted saying of Epstein, he's building what you want as a heavenly ranch. Oh, geez, that didn't age well, huh? That who would want, Dr. Frankenstein or Dr. Moreau? Not any normal person would want that kind of ranch. Give me a break, folks. Really? Epstein was reported to have bought $600 bed sheets. He was said to have his bread flown in from New York. Look, I'm not a big fan of Jeffrey Epstein, as you all know, but I do not blame him about the bread from New York. All right? You can't fault the guy for getting bread flown in. If I was rich, I'd be having bread flown in to me on a daily basis because the bread in Las Vegas is horrible. So I'm not, who cares? These rich people had sheets for $600 flown in or bread flown in. That's neither here nor there. That's just filler, folks. They do have money, a local builder remarked. but money was still money for Epstein. He sued Santa Fe County in 2000, alleging that he was being overcharged on property taxes because the ranch was worth only $30 million, not the $33 million it had been officially appraised. He demanded a refund of $20,000 he had already paid. The suit was settled for an undisclosed amount. Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure somebody from the state called him and said, "Hey, Jeff, how can we fix this? How can we fix this, Jeff? We want to make sure that golden cow doesn't dry up. We want to make sure the next time we're up for election, you have your hand in our pocket, dropping us a few coins." Visitors to the mansion, including the leading candidate for governor in 2002, Bill Richardson, who was later quick to say that he was accompanied by his wife. Epstein contributed $50,000 to Richardson's campaign. Epstein kicked in another $50,000 towards Richardson's successful run for re-election in 2006. And we read off some of the donations to politicians, right? These $50,000 donations are huge. He hardly made donations this big to anybody else besides Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. So for Richardson to say that they're not close, I'm certainly not buying that. And we all know our good friends in Antarctica aren't buying it, and neither are the polar bears. Gary King, the former governor's son, was running for state attorney general that year, and Epstein donated $15,000 to his primary campaign. Epstein also donated $10,000 toward Jim Baca's campaign to become head of the Land Commission and $2,000 toward Santa Fe County Sheriff Jim Solano's bid for re-election. Now, why would he donate this money? Baca's campaign to become head of Land Commission, well, he had a lot going on with his ranch and the Land Commission as far as what he was leasing, etc., etc. Then, let's see, what else? Of course, he'd want the governor to be involved, right? He'd love to donate some money to someone who's going to run for governor or, going to be the state attorney general. He'd love to have them in his pocket. And then the $2,000 towards the sheriff. So he's spreading out the dough, right? In Santa Fe. He's really spreading out the money, making sure that his bases are covered. In the meantime, Epstein was apparently flying in underage girls as well as fresh bread, usually through Santa Fe when he was using his Gulfstream or the larger Albuquerque airport when using his Boeing 727. One of his accusers would say that she was raped at the ranch when she was just 15. No doubt, people at the airports and ranch workers and folks in town saw the girls, but nobody seems to have contacted the authorities even after the news broke in July 2006 that Epstein was being charged in Florida with having sex with underage girls. Again, that's why another reason I'm going to Santa Fe, folks. I'm going to get on the ground, I'm going to talk to some of these people, and I'm going to see what the hell was going on there. What was the mindset? Was the money that important? Was the tax revenue that important to the county officials that they would turn the other cheek and look the other way, knowing that he's flying young underage girls in on this plane? If that's the case, then the whole entire conglomerate of people that were involved need to be taken down. The following year, Epstein was allowed to plead guilty to just one count of engaging a minor in prostitution. I don't even know what that means. How can you engage a minor in prostitution? How can a minor be a prostitute? If they're not age of consent, how can they consent to have sex? I just don't understand that. This unconscionable deal allowed him to serve just 13 months of nights and weekends in a private section of the Palm Beach County Jail. A resident of Santa Fe recalled to the Daily Beast that when she went into a local newsstand, the owner remarked, "Oh, he always used to come into town with all of these girls." Upon his release in 2009, Epstein was required by the plea deal to register as a sex offender. Federal law required him to also register in any other jurisdiction where he maintained a residence, including what his lawyers termed his vacation home outside Santa Fe. On July 23, 2010, Epstein received notice from the New Mexico Department of Public Safety stating it had been notified by its Florida counterpart that Epstein was a registered sex offender. A convicted sex offender who resides in New Mexico shall register with the county sheriff no later than 10 days after establishing residence in this state, the notice said. On August 17th, Epstein registered in person with Detective Deborah Anaya at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. Anaya afterwards paid a standard visit to the offender's home. What wasn't standard were the offender's conveyances, which she listed as 2 private jets and 2 helicopters, along with a fleet of land vehicles. 2 days later, on August 19th, Epstein received a second notice from the NMDPS, which said you are not required to register with the state of New Mexico. A NMDPS spokesman later told the Daily Beast, "While in New Mexico, we expressly disapprove of such conduct as specific to this case. The determination made when someone must register in New Mexico is a fact-based inquiry. The state conducted a translation on August 11, 2010, regarding Mr. Epstein's 2008 conviction for procuring a person under the age of 18 for prostitution in the state of Florida, i.e., a comparison of the out-of-state elements of the Florida conviction were compared against New Mexico law. It was determined at the time that because the victim was not under the age of 16, Mr. Epstein does not have a registration requirement in New Mexico." And there you go, folks. The reason why Epstein had his New Mexico ranch. The reason why Epstein chose the place. Now, when he was first choosing the location, it wouldn't seem like that to people unless you were in the know of what he was up to, right? Well, when you look at everything in context, like I always talk about, and we start to see the larger picture emerge, we see the motivation behind this man's sinister behavior. The spokesman did not respond to a query as to how this squared with federal law, which would seem to say that the conviction in Florida required him to register in New Mexico, even if the victim was not under 16. The Florida definition of a minor was the operative one in whatever state when it came to registering. I wonder if that money he spread around had anything to do with that, huh? The cynic in me would say, oh yeah, the people had their palms greased, they had their pockets fattened, and in return, they decided to protect Epstein like everybody else. Or did his handlers from whichever intelligence agencies were running him step in and say, hey, this is going to be the deal here as well? Who knows, folks? That's why we're investigating this. That's why we're going to go to New Mexico. That's why we're going to get on the ground. That's why we're going to see what the deal was. The standard letterhead in both MNDPS notices was identical, but in retrospect, the words Bill Richardson, governor, seemed to jump out a little more in the second one. Richardson, a former energy secretary in the Clinton administration, was in the final months of his second and final term as New Mexico's governor, but Gary King remained the state attorney general until 2015. He unsuccessfully ran for governor in 2014 and may have imagined nobody would be any the wiser when he accepted $35,000 donated by 5 shell companies that Epstein had established. Again, there was a reason Epstein was spreading this dough around to the local politicians, folks, okay? He was trying to insulate himself from prosecution in New Mexico, and he was trying to insulate that ranch from whatever sort of scrutiny was going on elsewhere. The companies, 3 of which were apparently named after streets in the gated Brooklyn enclave where Epstein was raised, are based in the Virgin Islands. That is where Epstein has 2 private islands and where numerous people also saw him in the company of apparently underage girls, and where he has also made numerous political contributions and even hired a former governor's wife as his office manager. Epstein almost certainly would still be flying girls to New Mexico and the Virgin Islands along with his residences in Palm Beach and New York and likely Paris had he not been indicted by the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office for sex trafficking. He was arrested when he stepped off his Gulfstream at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. Epstein seems to have been abusing girls in New Mexico for at least 27 years. If he was traveling with underage girls after his widely reported conviction, no one should have imagined that he was doing so for any purpose other than should have been immediately reported to the authorities. So many people saw something and said nothing. Spot on, 100%. I don't want to hear the excuse, I know nothing, I saw nothing, I heard nothing. I don't even want to hear that excuse from these people anymore. Epstein apparently imagined people would keep saying nothing and he would remain at liberty. He has long leased grazing rights for 1,244 acres adjoining his Zorro Ranch, and he renewed the lease in 2016, so it runs to 2021. He was reported in 2011 to have 39 Angus cross cows and 2 bulls. The bulls are apparently for breeding. Pretty ironic considering the ranch, huh? Epstein seems to have been obsessed with breeding. As the New York Times reported, he talked about using his seed to impregnate a herd of women, whom he seems to have regarded as just cattle at whatever age. That's how they all look at all of us, folks. I have news for you. All of these elite look at us as we're just cattle to be done with as they please. He was said to have suggested to scientists that the human race would be improved by having what might, in ranch terms, be called an Epstein cross. Oh yeah, we'd certainly be improved if if the genesis of our population started from Jeffrey Epstein, right, folks? We would the population certainly wouldn't be more screwed up than it already is, huh? Give me a break. We can all hope that his line dies in prison along with him. Well, I think that you got your wish, buddy. When he supposedly killed suicide, his line died with him. Until then, look for Epstein to seek to curry favor with other inmates at the Metropolitan Correctional Center by putting money in their commissary accounts, the same way he used to contribute to politicians in New Mexico and the Virgin Islands. Out in New Mexico, one of Epstein's more remote neighbors was spared ever encountering him, but the artist Sina Brush did receive an unbidden letter from him not too long after he built his mansion. He informed her that he was paying her $25,000 for her refuge of 40 years. The letter did not even ask she was interested in selling. She sent back a polite no thank you note despite his rudeness. The modest parcel where Brush lives and works with an aging mare named Billy after the kid is one place that Epstein could not have bought with all his money. There, Brush enjoys a realm whose magical light and timeless peace have inspired many other artists, including not only Georgia O'Keeffe, but also Gerald Cassidy, Forrest Moses, Woody Gwynn, and Fritz Scholder. Here is isolation that can also lead to what is the very best in us. I'm not going anywhere, she told the Daily Beast. I need this kind of tranquility and beauty. There you have it, folks. Another article about Santa Fe, New Mexico as the countdown comes on for my trip. Now, the middle of the month, it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to be doing a lot of podcasts and a lot of even some live broadcasts from there. So as we get closer, I'll keep you up to date so you know how to follow me and, so you're aware of what's going on. And I'll try and drop these segments at the same times each day. That way it's uniformed and you folks can get them and listen to the content and we'll go from there. But this trip to New Mexico is going to be very interesting, folks. If everything pans out and the sources that I've been talking to are willing to talk to me, then I'm going to come back with some very interesting information. Now, I'm not saying that the information is going to lead to a huge break in the case or anything like that, but what it's going to do is give us some context, more context about what was going on on the ground in Santa Fe. I'm going to actually go and talk to the people, right? The people that actually saw these folks coming and going. There's airport workers, there's people in places like Starbucks, all kinds of places where people know a little bit of something. And if you get enough breadcrumbs, eventually you can make some chicken parmesan. And that's where we're headed, folks. So get ready, buckle up. 2020 is going to be the year that the predator turns into the prey. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. And if you would like to help support the show and help support some of these little trips that I have planned to expose these sons of bitches, you can click on the GoFundMe link that's in the description box. I will certainly be back later on tonight with our usual daily drop. Enjoy your day, folks.